The story began when our protagonist, Hasaku, returned to his hometown as a new teacher to fulfill a promise he had made 6 years ago. Excited on his first day on the job, he accidentally bumped into a student, scattering her mock exam results, which revealed her straight A's and her name, Suzuri. He instantly remembered her from his past, but Suzu wasn't thrilled when he casually addressed her by her first name, until she recognized him as her older brother figure from years ago. Confused, Suzu asked why he was there as a teacher, and he reminded her that he had made a promise and had returned to fulfill it. Suzu blushed and then scheduled a meeting with him for a later time. As she left, Hasaku reminisced about the good old days with Suzu until he moved to Tokyo for studies. His thoughts were interrupted when he bumped into another girl from his past, named Megu. Yet another girl named Sora jumped in and playfully assumed that Hasaku was her new sugar daddy candidate until she recognized him. The bell rang, and it was time for lectures, but Hasaku realized that he had met only 3 out of the 4 girls he was expecting to see. The last student finally showed up, a girl named Zenshu, who walked in like she just harvested a truckload of aura. Back then, all 4 girls lived in the same town with Hasaku, whom they addressed as their big brother because he was older. They had grown so fond of each other, and so when Hasaku had to leave for Tokyo, it was a tearful goodbye, most especially for Hasaku. He promised to return for them and ensure they had the most enjoyable youth ever, which was why he had now returned as their teacher, 6 years later. Later, Hasaku met Suzu studying during a lunch break, and she admitted that she'd been waiting the whole time for him to return and marry her as he promised. Hasaku was shocked until he remembered when it all happened. One day, Suzu was crying and refusing to do her homework, and he eventually cajoled her to do it and offered to tutor her. After they solved all the problems, he advised her not to give up whenever she had a problem to face. So Suzu promised to study really hard and become the smartest girl in school, as long as he promised to marry her in the future. Back in the present, Hasaku realized he had been careless to make such a mistake and apologized, but Suzu said it wasn't a big deal. But later, she broke down crying, saying she was stupid for clinging to that old promise and pushing herself to get perfect scores for him. As she walked out, she angrily flung one of her textbooks, but Hasaku dived to save it. Thereafter, he noted that the notebook was extremely worn out due to her diligent study and refusal to settle for less. For that reason, he apologized again for forgetting his promise and thanked her for working hard. Eventually, she forgave him but asked him what promise he had actually come to fulfill. After thinking for a while, she burst out laughing, remembering that he was supposed to make their youth fantastic. But she believed that since falling in love would be part of her youthful years, then he should teach her how to. Coincidentally, the other girls joined them, and surprisingly, each girl reminded Hasaku of his promise to marry her. Again, Hasaku had apologized for being a marriage scammer because he'd forgotten the careless promise he'd made to each girl. The girls, discovering that they'd been lied to, declared that men were truly scum. Megu burst into tears, asking how he had intended to have 4 wives, but Hasaku simply said he was a licentious pig and deserved to be beaten black and blue. Eventually, everyone made peace over a group selfie, but Hasaku continued being remorseful. Soon, the bell rang, and the girls told him to quit yapping. Hasaku accepted that they were right because what he did was horrible and being sorry wasn't enough, meaning he had to do more. Later, all the girls discussed what led to them being promised a marriage by Hasaku. Suzu told them that she worked hard on her studies for Hasaku, Sora said she had been refining her cuteness for his sake, and Zen said she had been attending school like a good girl, all because of him. They asked Megu what she had been doing in exchange for his promise of marriage, but she awkwardly said she had forgotten. However, Suzu saw this as a graceful attempt to keep their secret, and so she said that Megu was more wife material than the rest of them. Anyway, Megu shared that it seemed all 4 of them were holding on to Hasaku's proposal, even when only one of them could be his wife. To take up that spot, she would have to go against her girls, and so she said she was out because the girls were all better suited than she was. While she enjoyed the view, Sora joined her and reminded her about a day when she won the princess role in her class, but she turned it down because she wanted her friends to be princesses too. They were moody since that couldn't happen, and when Hasaku learned about it, he cheered them up, saying they were all his princesses. He also applauded them for protecting each other's feelings and being willing to share the princess role. However, he advised Megu that if there were things she wanted badly, she shouldn't give up on such things because she was being nice. Fast-forwarding to the present, Sora advised Megu that with the lessons she'd learned from her story, she shouldn't hold back from competing for a piece of Hasaku's heirloom eggplant. Joining them, Suzu declared that if Megu decided to challenge them, she would wholeheartedly welcome her and not give her an easy fight. This somehow boosted Megu's resolve not to give in, and the other girls all agreed that neither of them was relenting. After all, Hasaku was their prince, and it was only natural that they all loved him. They all wished for the best woman to win, but later that day, Hasaku was seen on his knees begging an officer to throw him in the slammer because he had broken the hearts of those 4 girls by committing marriage fraud. The idiot was sobbing uncontrollably, and the girls had to quickly shut him up, covering for him by saying that he was their theater club advisor and was only practicing his lines. Thereafter, Megu confronted him for his stupidity, and he apologized to them again, saying he couldn't keep his promises to all of them. This was because over those 6 years, the girls never forgot about him, as he never did about them. But the girls had grown into fine young ladies, and it was quite strange for him as a teacher to lay his hands on any of his students or have any inappropriate relationship with them. This meant that no matter how much the girls wanted, he couldn't reciprocate that energy because they were too precious to him to take advantage of them. For that reason, he forced himself to prepare for jail time so he could atone for hurting their feelings. Right then, they told him to stop being too hard on himself, and Megu stepped forward, telling him to lift his head. Thereafter, the pissed-off lass landed a dirty slap on his face that sent him skidding all the way to the floor. She then told him to be a man because no one gives a hoot about that teacher student, or whatever excuse he was bringing up. She reminded him also that he was a big brother to them, and he would be hurting them even more by saying things like he would go to jail, meaning he would be leaving them yet again. Also, they tossed all the facial mannequins of himself, saying that those dummy things could never replace him, so he should leave the past behind, look at them, and understand their feelings. Hasaku punched himself for no justifiable reason, leaving him with one tooth flying out the window, as he asked the girls to attack him with all they've got, and in return, he'll make the next 2 years their very best years. To Megu, he said he never thought he would see a day when she would hit him, but the lady said she couldn't stand seeing him look so pathetic and feeling sorry for himself. He was impressed that she had finally learned to speak up after all those years, because in those days, she had asked him to marry her on the condition that she would speak up and be selfish and proud, and never give up on something she desperately wanted. Soon, they both reunited with the other girls, and Zen pointed out that since Hasaku was against student-teacher relationships, once they graduated from school, that would no longer be a problem. Dude was absolutely shocked, but the other girls agreed, saying they could spend the next 2 years building up their love with him and ask him to pick one of them at graduation. Even though Hasaku was trying to protest this, his fate had been sealed by those girls. The next day, they all went to the beach, and Sora was all about her selfies, trying to bombard all her Soyboy fans with goon-worthy content, not to mention that she wanted Hasaku to see her hottest selfies, especially the ones with the heaviest filters. She asked him what he thought of her pictures, and he said that those snap filters made her look like a botched Botox Barbie. This was a total slap in the face, and she could barely survive this unexpected verbal attack, so she went to cry her heart out to Megu. Megu told her that maybe she should tone down on the filters, but Sora said she couldn't possibly do that because she had 20,000 followers on Insta and was an up-and-coming influencer. Still, the other girls insisted that Sora should be more confident in her natural cuteness, but she said it was quite saddening that Hasaku would still not call her cute despite all her attempts. Anyway, she changed completely from sweet and cute to absolutely hideous, putting on an expression that showed her determination to make Hasaku call her cute by pummeling her cuteness into him until he was black and blue. From that moment onwards, Sora went wild trying to do every possible cute thing in the book. She started by cosplaying as a chef and baking some cookies that tasted as horrible as her cookie, while expecting a compliment from Hasaku. Unfortunately, he only said that they were good to make her feel better, and since what she was hoping to hear was the word cute, she decided to try other means. From showing him her bunny ears to her maid cosplay fit and others, Sora slammed Hasaku with every technique of cuteness. But the dude still did not acknowledge her cuteness, although he used every other compliment. At this point, her girls were feeling bad for her and pitying the blockhead because she had put out a lethal amount of cuteness and still hadn't got a compliment from Hasaku. Megu was already fed up and decided to intervene, but nothing could be done at this point because Sora was even more consumed by her obsession with getting the cute word from Hasaku that she planned to bring everything to an end after school. She started by waiting for him after lectures so they could walk home together, which certainly warmed his heart, and to which she responded that she was willing to do anything for him. However, Hasaku simply replied with thanks, and this sealed it for Sora, who was already done trying to get him to say cute indirectly until she asked him to call her cute straight up. But Hasaku did not even mince words and told her a straight no. This rejection felt worse than an arrow sent straight to her core, so she asked why not, because she felt it was the duty of all of humanity to declare her cuteness. But Hasaku told her with the straightest expression ever that he wasn't willing to be tagged as a creepy uncle because teachers shouldn't be talking in such a manner to their students. Sora said it was fine by her, but Hasaku said, as her teacher, it was his responsibility not to act dumb and go about calling her cute, or else he'd be responsible for what followed afterwards. Just then, they bumped into some fatso who was Sora's coach and wanted her to fill in for one of their pitchers because he remembered that she had a great arm and a strong grip. This request bummed Sora out, and she reminded him that she wasn't a member of their team, but he explained that they were so short-handed that they were open to outsiders. Sora's problem was that she would get sweaty, sunburnt, or muddy, and also didn't want to mess up her hair, but her coach told her such words sounded weird coming from her because it didn't fit her to be acting so prissy. This took Sora down memory lane as she remembered the countless times when she brought victory for the team. From the get-go, Sora had always been excellent at sports and played more with boys. She equally enjoyed sewing and seeing cute things, but she suffered from having a mind of her own. The moment someone felt something would look good on her, she had to be fine with it, simply because they said it suited her. One time when her classmates were asked what they wanted to be when they grew up, Sora expressed her interest in becoming a celebrity idol, but her friends suggested that she would be a baseball player because it fit her so well. In fact, her grandparents gifted her baseball gloves for her birthday. In reality, all Sora wanted was a cute hair clip. She had always known being cute wasn't for her, but she played around with the idea of cuteness regardless and still sometimes failed to see the cuteness in herself. But everything changed when Hasaku came into her life. When he saw the dress she had initially assumed was ugly, he instantly said it suited her nicely and was glad to see a new side of her. Coincidentally, he also handed her a cute hair clip for her birthday, saying he felt it suited her nicely. Sora was speechless because almost everyone in her life had never made her feel girly enough, and so she told him that she wasn't cute. She was even more surprised when Hasaku insisted that he could guarantee how adorable she was. This made her consider that she could be more than just a cool girl and could be a cute girl. For that reason, she asked him to marry her if she became a charming young woman, and that was where the marriage promise came from. Currently, her baseball coach was pissing her off by taking out the cute ribbon Hasaku had given her, saying the baseball cap would suit her better than the ribbon. But Hasaku immediately stopped the idiot, saying that the only one who got to choose what suited Sora was herself, and not any old fat fool of a coach. Also, he let him know that Sora was pursuing her own interests, and that suited her just fine. Because she was cute. After the altercation, Hasaku returned Sora's hair clip to her, and the girl was completely flushed, with her heart almost pounding out of her chest. Her poor coach realized that he was the bad guy and apologized, saying he really needed a backup. Sora told the old fool that he had no ounce of tact, which is why he was still ugly and unpopular. Plus, there was nothing cute about an old geezer like him with his depressed face. However, in the end, Sora took up the baseball hat and gloves, and the moment she walked into that game, it was already hers for the win. After bringing that team victory and getting nice shots from Hasaku, they both walked back home. She asked him to see the pictures he had taken, and it turned out he hadn't used filters. He had just used the basic camera. She was upset, saying she couldn't upload any of her pictures on Insta, and said that he better get used to it because he would be taking a lot more pictures of her once they got married. However, Hasaku tried to remind her that none of that could happen at the moment. But Sora reminded him that he had initially said if he ever called her cute, being her teacher, he would have to take responsibility. That was when the idiot realized that he had messed up. He screamed his lungs out trying to explain himself, but Sora took off immediately and smiled at the fact that he had called her cute at long last. She stared at a photo of herself and found it cute even without filters, though she would never let anyone see those hideous pictures. Ever since Hasaku returned to school as a teacher, he hadn't achieved his goal of giving the girls the best youth ever, so he lay restlessly on his bed, wondering what made for a good youth and what the girls would like. His brain, always in airplane mode, suggested that girls their age would always like sweets, and so he planned to invite them for some after school. However, 3 of them were busy, much to his disappointment, and Zen was nowhere to be found just yet. He later found her doing creepy stuff in the bushes and asked her if she was interested in getting sweets. She agreed, but said it would be more fun when everyone was around. However, a cat from hell jumped right in between them and stole her hair clip. Hasaku chased after the cat, trying to get it back, and Zen tried to help, but he told her it was his duty as a teacher to bail his students out of trouble. Eventually, Zen herself tried so hard that she gave up and said cats really rule the world because humans would never overcome them. Hasaku gave her a piggyback ride, but she almost passed out moments later, saying she was heavier than she appeared. He told her she had certainly grown, and this made Zen tear up when she remembered that they had once had a conversation about her growing up. Much later, they reunited with the other girls and Megu saw the cat with Zen's hair clip. She tried to catch it but failed, and the cat headed straight for Suzu. Hasaku cheered Suzu on, saying she could do it, but the girl interpreted it as a love confession in which he was proclaiming his undying love and intention to marry only her. In the end, neither of them was able to capture the cat, and it darted straight towards the storage room. From then, Zen took over, thanking Hasaku for his time while she continued trying to catch the cat. Eventually, she found a way to trap it, but somehow she also managed to enchant Hasaku with her charms. He lay over her, causing her heart to thump fast, and eventually had to relieve the awkwardness by bringing her back up to her feet. Just then, the other girls rushed in and all ended up on each other, with Hasaku sandwiched in between them. He accidentally grabbed Megu's mummy udders, and she was disgusted. She called him a cultured idiot, but that was the very least of their problems, as 2 people walked into the room just then. Hasaku feared that he would be caught in that compromising situation with his students and nearly crucified by an angry mob, and the girls equally feared this for him, so everyone tried to stay shush. Eventually, the girls left, and Hasaku and his gang tried to retrieve the hair clip from the cat but found the door shut. They eventually retrieved the hair clip, and the cat flew out the window, but then they found themselves locked in that warehouse. The situation was scary, and Megu was panicking while Suzu was breathing hard like she was getting the fat rod. Unfortunately, no one had their phones, so they had to call out loud for help. Even worse, it was raining outside, so there would be no one outside to help them, meaning they were stuck in there for real. Zen apologized to everyone, saying they had gotten involved because of her weirdness, but Hasaku held her face and told her to lift her chin up because no one was blaming her, and even though they were currently in a tight spot, he would think of something. This reminded her of a memory back then when Hasaku told her that everything would work out as long as she was smiling. So when he told her to smile this time around, she did so, but with tears in her eyes. He tried to cheer her up and the other girls joined. And later, Hasaku told everyone to relax because he would get them out of there in no time. He began by giving them a lesson on biology, stating that cats could wedge themselves through any tight space so long as their head could fit. According to him, this was possible because cats are liquid. And so, Hasaku, knowing that the human body is also mostly water, assumed that he was also a cat and could squeeze himself right through the window. He started, but his buns were stuck in the window, so the girls tried to pull him back in. Unfortunately, nothing seemed to be working because he was stuck for real. At the same time, those 2 girls from earlier returned to the warehouse with some stuff, only to find Hasaku's talking buns all up in their faces while he admired the rainbow. In the end, they all got out of the storage room. and at least they were glad they had recovered Zen's hairpin. Seeing that Zen was still not completely, confidently smiling, Hasaku encouraged her by saying she was such a vibe and there was never a dull day with her around. Zen was trying to take it all in the moment, and not what you think, when Sora sprang out of nowhere and jumped on her, causing them all to fall to the floor. Eventually, the girls had to go take their shower and forced Hasaku to escort them and wait outside. He wondered why he had to be there, but the girls said they were not willing to see some Halloween creep in the bathroom, so he swore to protect them with his life. But he didn't bargain for having to be blindfolded while the girls did as they pleased. While sitting blindfolded, he soon dozed off and had a dream that left him soaked in gooey stuff. Suddenly, one of the ladies was latched firmly onto him, so he got startled and accidentally took off his eye covers, believing someone had touched him in real life. At that time, the girls were still undressed, so he got all sorts of slaps and punches on his face, including the tag of being a cultured fool. He was sent out with a face looking as swollen as freshly baked bread, but Hasaku could tell that what he felt was not just in his dream but in real life, and the only thing was that he couldn't prove which girl had touched him. Afterwards, he called all four of them for a chit-chat and told them it was outrageous for any one of them to disrupt their morals by selling themselves. The girls could tell that Hasaku wanted to hang himself because he had seen their fresh skins for the first time in his life and was feeling guilty for being the creepy uncle he had never wanted to be. The girls told him it wasn't a big deal, but Suzu internally acknowledged how responsible Hasaku was, which renewed her drive to uphold school rules and promote public morals since she was the student council president. So far, she had been so helpful and active in her duties, and she was very busy that there was barely any time to hang out with Hasaku and the girls. They were proud of her because even as a second-year student, she was pulling it off so effortlessly. She had beauty, brains, and the admiration of the entire school, to the extent that no one felt anyone would be better suited as the student council president. For that, her gang was really proud of her, and Hasaku personally felt Suzu was thriving and not really having a hard time. He was jealous, however, when he overheard some boys speaking about how awesome she was and how very dedicated she was to her duties. On the other hand, Suzu was blushing so hard while listening to a girl confess her crush on someone else, saying she could feel a spark with a guy, but couldn't get him to confess and wanted to know what Suzu would have done if she were in her shoes. First off, the girl said that she and her crush had known each other for a long time, so it had been a long time coming. All Suzu could think of was Hasaku, with whom she was in the same situation, and so she told the student that perhaps all the girl had to do was create the right setting to be alone just for the two of them, so he could confess. However, the girl said that that was her everyday situation because the guy was her neighbor next door, and they were always in her room alone, studying human anatomy very practically. However, Suzu almost lost her mind when she imagined herself being all alone in a room with Hasaku. But things were even more terrible when the girl beside the other girl told her just to show the guy some skin and push him, and that would get him to confess his feelings. However, Suzu accidentally responded to that, saying she couldn't do that because the guy was older than she was. But things got very awkward when she realized she had responded to them and blown her own cover. Later, Suzu sat in class, bummed out and thinking of how to project a more dependable image of herself. She was lost in thought as she wrote a romantic scenario that was making her floodgates burst open. Eventually, the deluded lady got lost and placed her head on her desk. But she noticed Hasaku's presence and asked him how long he had been standing there and whether he had read whatever she was writing. Hasaku asked her why she was feeling that way and kept her head on her desk. Seeing that she wasn't in the mood, he cheered her up, saying he noticed how incredible she was in performing her duties as the student council president, although it would be best for her not to push herself too hard. The moment she heard him call her incredible, Suzu became lost in it and became even more determined to fulfill her student council president duties. She literally offered to help every single person in class, from those around to those afar. Some students told her to take a break, but Suzu insisted that she would keep going because Hasaku had praised her for her efforts, and she had to keep going. Much later, Hasaku reunited with the girls and found out that Suzu wasn't joining them for lunch, which made Sora moody. Hasaku told them that it was all because she was busy fulfilling her duties as the student council president. But Sora said that what Suzu was doing was beyond her duties for the council, and more like a huge load of junk work that she had put herself up to, and that made everyone worry for her. Later, while Suzu was busy getting choked up with more responsibilities she brought upon herself, Megu told her not to do too many things at once, right as they bumped into each other. However, Suzu panicked and told Megu that she would reward her out of the blue. The other girls ran to welcome Suzu, but she hurriedly apologized to them, saying she had a lot to think about and couldn't join them. This left the girls feeling sad, and Megu told her not to push herself too hard. Suzu promised she was fine and said she'd see everyone the next day, but the moment she got back home, she felt like a failure who had made her friends worry. She had intended to set a problem-solving schedule so that she could go home with everyone the next day, but as she searched for her notebook, she realized that her book was missing. The scariest part of it all was that she had written a ton of embarrassing stuff, especially about her feelings for Hasaku, so she feared that someone would go through it and expose her. That very night, Suzu ran to school and wondered how to get in because she had arrived a little too late and climbing over the school gate was against the school rules. But just then, Hasaku magically showed up, asking her what she was doing there, and she shared that she had forgotten something, but now that the gate was closed, she didn't know what to do. However, Hasaku shocked her when he opened a small portion of the gate and told her that even if what he was doing was illegal, she was in luck that he was on lockup duty for that day, so they could quickly search for what she was missing. Luckily for her, she found her journal on the floor and realized she could finally chill. But just then, it occurred to her that she was all alone in that school at night with Hasaku, and it was the exact scenario she had painted in her book. She felt bad and wished she had worn something more spicy and not the worn-out nightwear she had on. But she planned to get something spicier the next time she went out with Sora. Hasaku arrived, interrupting her thoughts and asking if she had found her book, and then asking her why she was so frantic or how important the book was for her to be that frantic. Suzu said that it had all the notes of the things she had been asked to help with as a student council president, and she wanted to go over them at home. Hasaku explained that even though she was a hard worker, she shouldn't have to wear herself too thin because she was keeping her other friends worried. However, Suzu explained that she felt more accomplished whenever she was able to complete any of the assignments written in her notebook, and imagined how nice it would be to bring everything to fruition. But when she remembered the little things she wrote that she would also want to make come true, she just laughed. Anyway, she said she would soon better get going and then thanked Hasaku for helping out. However, Hasaku slammed his palm against the locker, putting her in a very steamy position and asking her to follow him into the faculty room. He turned the lights off, saying it would be bad news for him as a new teacher to be found walking the student home, so they had to keep things discreet. He prepared a cup of tea for her and gave it to her to drink, but Suzu felt bad and apologized for making him break his school rule on her behalf, which was compromising for him as a teacher. Hasaku told her not to let such things bother her because he had only done what he wanted to do. Besides, school regulations were in place to protect students, and there was no point in following such rules if they were going to make the students' lives feel more miserable. For example, Suzu's friends were a bunch of serial rule breakers who seemed to be living their best life, breaking every rule in the book. For this reason, he advised her not to force herself to be something she wasn't because no matter how hard she worked, she would break down pretty fast if she took on too many tasks by herself. He told her she was awesome just as she was, so all she had to do was take it easy once in a while. Suzu felt warmed inside, realizing that Hasaku had taken the stress to let her see how extra hard she was pushing herself. As she drank her tea and felt more relaxed, she confessed that she had never seen school as a place where she could feel so vulnerable, and so she asked Hasaku to take a seat right beside her. However, he boldly and flatly declined the offer, saying he was good but she was pissed, asking if she had offended him. But he confessed that ever since he got back, things had been weird, and in such a situation, being all by themselves in that room, it would be pretty impossible for him to keep his cool. However, he realized that refusing her offer so sternly made things even weirder, so he would just have to sit like a normal person. Anyway, Suzu was a bit more at ease, but her heart was beating so fast and hard that she feared Hasaku might hear it. They sat in the quietness of the night, But Suzu's lewd thoughts were interrupted by Hasaku's lousy slurping of his tea, and she had to warn him that she was having a pretty good monologue that he had just spoiled. She had wondered secretly whether he heard her heart beating because that was her aim, so she asked if he heard anything at all, and to her dismay, he said he hadn't heard anything. She then decided to curl up closer to him to make it easier for him to hear it, but still, Hasaku didn't hear a thing. The girl laughed it off, saying she probably had too much earwax built up, but the problem was how her entire body was fighting every form of self-control she had within her when all she yearned for was Hasaku piercing her with his steamy stick. However, things became even more awkward for her when Hasaku handed over her journal, telling her not to misplace it again, and the page he had managed to open straight away had all the vivid imaginations Suzu was nursing about them. In that moment, he read what she wrote and complimented her on her literary skills. But at that point, Suzu wanted to be buried alive. The next day, it seemed Suzu was freer and open with Hasaku, asking him questions more comfortably than she could before, because he had now seen the most shameful side of her, and it made things easy for her as she approached him. However, Megu couldn't comprehend this sudden level of closeness between the two, and she soon became jealous of Suzu, wondering what the girl did to make Hasaku so free with her. She accidentally let her thoughts out loud, saying she also wanted to do that. But some girls who were talking about having their first kiss assumed she had also said she wanted that, and that she had done the kissing thing before. However, Megu explained that she hadn't really done it, and it suddenly seemed like she had committed a crime worthy of life imprisonment. She changed her mind, saying she had certainly kissed, and there was no big deal there. However, this was the aspect of Megu who always wanted to show off at every slight provocation. After her conversation with the girls, she stormed off and dragged Hasaku by the hand, saying she needed his help to understand something. She pulled him outside only to tell him that it was he who got in her way, so he shouldn't jump to any silly conclusions. The same way she walked towards him was the same way she spun and stormed off so cheekily, wondering why she was quite a useless girl. She had actually brought him out to ask for his social media handle, but suddenly found herself too shy to do so because she was scared of getting rejected. Later that day, all the girls walked back from school, discussing how the summer season was coming to a close. But Megu seemed to be lost in thought and somewhat sad. At the same time, Sora asked the girls if they had Hasaku's social media handle. This made Megu realize that maybe Sora had already had Hasaku's number. One of the girls suggested that they ask Hasaku so that it would be easier for them to invite him for hangouts. The other girls, like Suzu, championed the idea, saying they wouldn't be asking him as students and teacher, but rather as childhood friends. Megu was still lost in thought as she realized that if Sora were in her position, she would have asked Hasaku so brazenly, and Suzu would have done the same thing, and so would Zen. The girls noticed that Megu was mumbling to herself, but before she could vindicate herself, her phone rang, startling her, and it was her mother asking her to stop by the store on her way back and get some groceries. Seeing that Megu had errands again, the girls offered to help her, but she thanked them, saying she'd have to go the other way. When she left, Suzu asked Sora if she could help them ask Hasaku for his social media handle, but she said she couldn't do it and suggested they ask Zen instead. Somehow, that matter was never resolved, and the next scene showed Megu going grocery shopping when she accidentally bumped into Hasaku. She soon felt ashamed of the quantity of food she was buying, and had to explain that it wasn't as though she had gone on a mission to look shapeless, but that it was for her entire household. She showed him the shopping list, but soon became so conscious of her scent, hoping she didn't stink of sweat. She had thought of increasing the space between the two of them, but remembering how close Sora and Hasaku had gotten earlier, Suzu realized that she wouldn't make any progress by increasing their distance. Her heart was thumping so loudly when Hasaku told her that the list seemed too long for one person to buy, and he wanted to help her out. Eventually, he grabbed the shopping basket from her and began helping her to shop, but she soon realized that it seemed they were on some sort of date. In any case, she planned to seize that chance to get closer to him, and suggested to herself asking for his contact, so they could even get to a point of holding hands at the very least. They walked to the next aisle and picked a few clothes for her younger siblings, and Megu shared how her siblings were always all over her, asking to play even when she wanted to rest. He let out a small laugh, and she glared at him when he explained that it was because she had become so dependable in contrast to how she was before, a big crybaby, and had now become a responsible older sister that he was proud of. She told him to get off whatever was his problem and help her pick socks for her siblings, and then she taught him what to look out for. But somehow this made her feel as though they were doing married couple stuff, picking out clothes for their kids together. She couldn't believe that Hasaku dared to remain so calm and collected like a perfectly diligent father, and things had already gone so far in her head as having 2 babies and a cat. Hasaku interrupted her thoughts when he found a perfect pair of socks and told her that, since she seemed so spaced out, he could take over the shopping while she rested. At that moment, Megu thought it would be a good time to ask for his social media handle, since she was no longer the scaredy girl she always used to be and had now changed. This time, Megu had pushed herself to run until her lungs almost gave out, and Hasaku wanted to find out why she was suddenly obsessed with running. She then shared that they had all been measured in class, and the boys laughed at her because she was taller. She felt really embarrassed but couldn't speak up for herself. So the other girls, meaning Susie and the rest, picked up her fight and beat the boys up so bad that the teacher yelled at them. This, however, made Megu feel bad, and she felt that if she weren't so big in size, her friends wouldn't have been yelled at on her behalf. And that was why she took up running as a new obsession, because she heard it could help reduce her height. However, Hasaku surprised her when he revealed bluntly that he was going to go bald, as he had inherited most of his grandfather's traits and was so convinced that he would be as bald as his grandpa. He had already started losing his hair and had been mocked by some of his mates. But he asked Megu to remember when they had all come to visit him when he had a cold during the winter, and he had become delirious from fever. The girls placed their cold hands on his forehead to help calm his fever down, and for that reason, he felt grateful that he had become a bit bald, because if his forehead weren't so broad, he wouldn't have been able to feel the girls' kindness towards him all at once. Megu was lost at this point, wondering what the moral lesson was, and Hasaku explained that no matter what anybody said to him about getting bald, he loved his big forehead. And no matter what anyone said, he loved Megu. He also said he couldn't tell how uncomfortable she was being taller than everyone else, but he knew she wasn't a coward because she didn't hold back from telling those boys the nasty words they deserved, not for her cowardice, but because she was a kind girl who wouldn't want to hurt anyone, even if she got hurt. And for that reason, she was a very strong person. In fact, if he ever had one complaint about her, it would be that she was too selfless, and it was good to be a little selfish because she was human after all. Megu was relieved now. She was initially scared of how she would get bigger, and her size would make it harder for her to speak up. But now she would stand up for herself thanks to Hasaku, who had shown her that it would all be okay. In fact, she promised that when she was bigger and could speak up for herself and be selfish and proud, then Hasaku would have to get married to her. Back in the present, Megu realized she had still failed to ask Hasaku for his social media handle, and was embarrassed that she had the audacity to think they would be holding hands when she couldn't even muster up the courage to ask him for something as straightforward as his social media handle. This made her feel she hadn't changed one bit, and she soon became tearful but had to tell herself not to cry. Luckily, her mom called her to inform her that all meats were on sale for a limited time. That instant, the mall was completely taken over by Black Friday thugs who were all eager to grab some cheap, fresh meat. Megu joined in the struggle, and Hasaku asked her whether she could keep up, but she said that it was easy for her because she was so big and had pretty long arms, which was fortunate for her. However, she was trapped between everyone else and felt crushed when Hasaku helped to draw her out and pulled her outward, asking if she was okay. In that awkward situation, some little ones were cackling out loud, saying Megu and Hasaku were kissing, so Hasaku quickly refrained and apologized for getting too close. However, Megu said he didn't have to pull away, and then told him that she had to pull herself together to make her mind known to him once and for all. With her hand still in his hand, she brought her face closer to his and whispered in his ear that she loved him, and for that reason wanted them to be even more connected. Finally, she asked him for his social media handle, and after she obtained it, the girls were all excited. But Megu explained that she had to teach Hasaku how to use the app, almost as though she was teaching a boomer introduction to technology 101. In the end, while the other girls were just quite excited that they had finally gotten Hasaku's social media contact, Megu was so proud of herself for getting around a task that seemed nearly impossible for her. Meanwhile, poor Hasaku was suffering as the girls bombarded his phone with all sorts of messages. Days later, Hasaku and the girls were preparing for the sports festival, and everyone was hyped about it. Megu decorated the megaphone, making it so dazzling that it could blind the eye, so Hasaku said it was too flashy. Megu noted, however, that cheer performance was proportional to megaphone decoration, and it was expected because Megu was on the cheerleading squad. On the other hand, Zen was hidden somewhere in a box, sulking in defeat because she hated the idea of draining her social battery with dumb things like the sports festivals. Suzu picked her up, saying they could go practice jumping rope together because no one was permitted to sit idly. From every indication, Sora was the most excited about the sports festival, and she was even on the planning committee. There was a headband myth circulating in their school, which stated that two people in love who traded headbands during the sports festival would forever be intertwined. But the girl who told Sora this said it was all a scam because she had traded headbands with her boyfriend, and they still broke up. After hearing this, Sora definitely had a plan up her sleeve. That morning, she ran after Hasaku and told him not to miss her when she was out in the spotlight because literally everyone was asking after her, and she was a hot commodity, given her role as a committee member. Later, she reunited with the other girls and told them what she had heard about the headband myth. For some reason, they made their plans in whispers and agreed to all trade headbands with Hasaku the following day. However, Zen reminded those three dumb girls that Hasaku had only one headband, and the only thing that would even make sense was for them to cut it up into 4 ways. Sora suggested that they could get him to grow 3 more heads. But Suzu, Megu, and Zen told her to trade her own headband with Hasaku, because neither of the girls would have known about the headband myth if she hadn't shared it with them. Instantly, she rejected it, saying there was no fun in that, and if the girls forfeited for her own sake, then she wouldn't be happy. As an alternative, Zen then suggested that they have a friendly fight for the headband and compete in the games at the sports festival, so the winner would get the right to exchange headbands with Hasaku. And in the end, whatever the girl chose to do was up to herself. Everybody thought of this as a great plan, and they all agreed that there would be no sore losers, as they would fight fair and square. Later, preparations started with Megu, who was doing her best to look as hot as she could, and in the process accidentally burnt some of the snacks she was supposed to bring to the competition. On the other hand, there was Suzu, who wanted to see herself in the spiciest outfit to attract Hasaku's attention and wondered if she was doing way too much. But the thing was that she and Megu were both thinking of ways to get Hasaku to think about them. Meanwhile, Zen was busy with her dog, almost as if she wasn't supposed to be preparing for her competition with the other girls. And finally, there was Sora, who seemed not to be able to make up her mind about what outfit to turn up in because she looked cute in literally all of them. And so she decided to wear what would make her move around the easiest because she was determined to show Hasaku what she was made of the next day. After all the anticipation, the following morning came, and the school sports festival was declared open. As the competition began, Sora was brimming with confidence and determination to win, and thus far she had been doing a pretty good job bringing victory to her team. Megu, on the other hand, was flaunting all the good things of life in everyone's face, attracting the attention of all the boys as she participated as a cheerleader. She, however, felt embarrassed about having to wear such revealing uniforms and wouldn't have signed up for the job if she knew just how skimpy they were, as if matters weren't bad enough. Hasaku had the audacity to let his eyes linger on her, so she told him to get his cursed eyes off her, and then nagged about having to wear such an embarrassing dress. But Megu sounded like a drain pipe because she had gotten so hoarse from screaming during her cheerleading duties, so Hasaku handed her some mint to help with the voice problems. Before she left, he complimented her on how good she looked with her cheerleading outfit, but every word coming from his mouth created an ocean under her skirt. She simply smirked right back at him and returned to her cheerleading with even more enthusiasm than before. The next in line were Zen and Suzu, who were to compete in the jump rope competition. The girls impressed everyone with their creativity as Suzu decided to carry Zen on her back while jumping rope all by herself. As witty and creative as this was, it was against the school rules, so unfortunately, their foul was called out, and they had to drop out of the competition. Suzu apologized, saying they didn't know what they were doing was against the rules, but Hasaku told her that people couldn't have enough of watching them be absolute creative geniuses. As he showered her with compliments, Suzu was drenched in her own sweat, and her shirt was so soaked that it could reveal her G-cups. She went deep into her lewd imaginations of herself and Hasaku, but was interrupted by Zen, who immediately rushed to hug her tight and help her protect her secret from everyone. This made Suzu realize just how nasty her mind had become, but she had no time to think about that, as it was soon time for the four girls to compete against each other and determine who got to switch headbands with Hasaku. Earlier that day, they had discussed that the sport would be the beanbag tossing event for which they could be scored based on the number of bags they got individually. Besides, none of them had an experience advantage in the game, and the risk of their different athletic abilities factoring in was minimal. Out of all the games, that beanbag tossing event was probably the most fair, and all four girls agreed to do it. The competition began, and the girls started throwing their beanbags as many as they could, because the highest number of beanbags thrown would determine the winner. Hasaku was the referee, and he kept cheering on, although he was quite terrified by the scary, intense expressions on their faces, seeing how focused and fired up the girls were for such an unofficial competition. When the competition was over, the girls eagerly hounded Hasaku to announce the scores, and he began saying Suzu scored 25 points, Megu scored 27 points, Zen scored 98 points, and Sora scored exactly 100 points. Apparently, Sora was throwing like a cannon with 1,000 arms, and so was Zen, who unfortunately lost by only 2 points. In the end, the girls had a friendly handshake, and all the ladies encouraged Sora to carry through with her original plan to trade headbands with Hasaku and make him her man forever. Later that day, everyone settled for a shared lunch, and all insisted on feeding Hasaku because each girl had packed an extra lunch. Seeing that Hasaku couldn't possibly eat all of that, the girls decided to share their lunch and have a low-key banquet. While they were eating, Sora wondered when it would be the right time to ask Hasaku for his headband, and she had to plan the perfect moment. She noticed that he was staring in her direction, and it turned out he was just trying to wipe a stain off her mouth. That was the perfect chance, and all her girls were watching, hoping for them, but right then, right before she could ask him, a student came running to call her for a committee meeting. That was a fluke, but she told herself there was no point in rushing since they still had plenty of time. The school sports festival continued, and the afternoon games began with the scavenger hunt race. Of course, Sora had to look her cutest, so she borrowed some cheerleader outfits to make Hasaku's eyes drop the moment he saw her. However, that did not go as planned because she ended up carrying more than she bargained for. And the next time she wanted to try, Hasaku offered to participate in one of the games, making her chance to talk to him slip away. Eventually, it was the final event of the sports festival, which was the team relay. Sora's friends called her to ask how it had gone, that is, whether she had successfully traded headbands with Hasaku. But they were disappointed to learn that she had still been unable to ask him. Also, for the first time, Sora looked quite depressed and was extremely exhausted from all her trials. However, Megu asked her why she was moping about and reminded her that she was the team's anchor and had no time to slack. This gave her a burst of energy, and she was determined to take first place in the relay and would keep running to where Hasaku was sitting, after which she would grab his headband. However, the girls told her that her own plan was a disguised hit-and-run because the original plan was to trade headbands with Hasaku, not steal his. Either way, they had to do their best, so they all got set for their relay race. The order was Suzu starting the match, then Megu, then Zen, and finally their anchor, Sora, whom they were determined to help win. As the race began, their team was leading, and Sora asked Zen if she was all right, saying she didn't have to force herself to run. However, Zen said it was she who asked to run because even though she wasn't fast, she had always wanted to help them win and had been training daily after class. A major contributing factor to this was the time when everyone was locked in the storeroom because of her, which made her determined to show them how much she had grown and not make them worry. In the end, Zen was quite impressed, and she eventually held their position and handed over the baton to Sora. However, as Sora grabbed it, she accidentally tripped and started falling. As she hit the ground, Sora watched her competitors run ahead of her and was determined to get back up on her feet to keep the race going, because all the girls had done their best to get her to that point. She struggled because she was exhausted and had been running all day, but soon realized that it wasn't just the fatigue but that she was scared. From where he was, Hasaku called her name to cheer her on, and she remembered she wanted to get to him and had to keep going. Eventually, she sprang back to her feet and ran for her life, bringing the win for her team and still running right towards Hasaku. She was too exhausted and ran straight into his arms, and he instantly gave her a piggyback ride while she was nearly passing out. He took her to the infirmary, but the main nurse wasn't around, and Sora asked Hasaku what to do now that there were only two of them there and he had forced her in the first place. She wondered if he was plotting something indecent, but he instantly told her to take it off. Her nasty mind was to take off everything guarding her pearly gate down there, but Dude explained that it was just her sock he wanted her to take off because he could tell her left ankle was hurting from the fall. Sora was glad that he had noticed it and told him not to worry since it was only a minor sprain and didn't hurt that much. Regardless, for him to have noticed the sprain meant Hasaku must have been watching her pretty closely. Hasaku did confess that he had been closely observing her running form for a while and found it to be splendid. This made Sora do mental backflips out of excitement, as she thought Hasaku was obsessed until he compared her running form to horses he occasionally watched in Tokyo. When he was done wrapping her foot, Sora immediately undid all he had worked hard to do, saying it didn't look cute and was extraordinarily huge. Hasaku had had enough of her and called her a knucklehead, but the girl was laughing heartily, saying she was glad she tripped and fell. She asked him if he observed her performance during the race, and he told her that she was the coolest, being their anchor, and had demonstrated yet again why she was known for being resilient, because she was the type who would usually never give up and keep pressing forward, even if she tripped or got overtaken. Not to mention that she had a knack for doing what she loved with the brightest smile all the way through. Sora smiled and called herself cute, and when Hasaku didn't do it, she playfully poked him for not calling her cute. Thereafter, she told Hasaku to forget the headband because she would get it through her own effort. At that moment, she planted a kiss on his cheek, and Hasaku almost lost his mind. He wondered whether it was Sora who had kissed him that time in the bathroom. However, the girl simply smiled, saying she had wondered the same thing. Thereafter, she was eager to leave the room, but Hasaku asked to check her sprain, and she insisted that she was better. All the while, he didn't know that he could barely get up because his old man back had given way. At the same time, Sora reunited with the girls, who asked if she was okay, and she explained that Hasaku was just being overly worried. However, the girls couldn't help but notice that her face was all red, so Suzu excitedly asked if Sora ended up making the exchange, and the girl disappointed them again, saying she hadn't done it in the end. Regardless of everything, she enjoyed the most picture-perfect sports festival in history. None of the ladies understood what she meant, but they were glad for her either way. Days after the sports festival, the girls were excited because it was finally summer break time. Sora was eager to go around town with Hasaku to all the places, especially the beach. She wanted them all to go shopping for swimsuits. However, Hasaku reminded her that they still had a final exam before all of that. And then he told her that her midterm results were horrific, and as her teacher, he certainly couldn't allow her to run off for summer break with grades so low, even for an idiot. As such, he planned to have an intensive one-on-one tutoring session. But when he was done being assertive about the whole matter, he realized that Sora had already walked off long ago. However, Zen said that if Sora wasn't willing to have one-on-one lessons, then she was willing to have an up-close and personal tutorial with Hasaku. Hasaku was excited to see that having a passionate student was a breath of fresh air for him as a teacher. Not to mention that Zen already had perfect grades and was still willing to learn. He asked her what topic they should start with, but spontaneously, Zen raised her skirt and tormented the poor guy as she revealed her lowly shorts, so he begged her to drop it and warned her to stop goofing around. However, Zen was glad that things were going as planned because Hasaku had his cheeks flushed. He was sweating heavily and yelling in a high-pitched voice, meaning he was in a state of excitement, as Suzu had said. It turned out Zen had deliberately asked Suzu for tips on how to enhance her physical appeal to Hasaku. She said that the best way was to make him peek at her underwear and tease him with slight glimpses of her skin. But she was also observant that Zen seemed pretty serious and asked why the girl had a sudden interest in the topic. Zen then shared that it was because Hasaku didn't see her as a woman, thanks to her lowly form, and as such, she wanted to be seen as a viable romantic partner. Now that she had successfully completed the first phase of her plan, Zen was glad that Hasaku had finally seen her as a woman, and it was time to press forward with the next part of her plan. For the next phase, she met Sora to help take pictures of her, but Zen posed like an Egyptian mummy who had been rudely awakened, and Sora had to beg her not to scare her off. Sora demonstrated some perfect moves for Zen to copy for her own pose, but Zen replicated this in the most awkward way before Hasaku. The guy was completely lost, wondering what her plan was, but all she wanted to know was whether she had made his heart beat faster. Hasaku acknowledged that it was indeed beating faster, but it wasn't because of anything other than her unusual behavior. For some reason, this warmed Zen's heart, knowing that she got Hasaku's heart racing, but she wondered why the thing was working scarily well. Anyway, there was one final thing for her to try. Earlier, when she met Megu, she asked for tips on how to make Hasaku notice her, and Megu said that physical contact was important, advising things such as holding hands and crossing arms. Megu even bragged that she had done all of these with Hasaku and got to the point of hugging each other tightly. So now all Zen had to do was establish close contact with Hasaku. Meanwhile, Hasaku noticed she had calmed down and said they could sit and discuss the topics their upcoming test would cover. But Zen shocked him when she plopped her peaches right onto his thighs, leaving him quite lost as she leaned deeper to establish close contact. In the end, Hasaku assumed that all she wanted was a bit of attention and then patted her head, treating her like she was wearing nappies. However, Zen absolutely didn't like this and told Hasaku that he had gotten it all wrong, and they had to talk. Recalling some of the pointers he had got from Sora, she started the conversation by asking Hasaku what his hobbies were. He answered literally a million questions, and she topped it off by asking him how many kids he wanted in the future. He answered her saying he wanted a baseball team, and then she kept going deeper with the question, but it seemed none of these things were getting to him, as he was fully immersed in small talk mode. And so she realized she had to be plain and simple, else the fool wouldn't get her angle. As such, she confessed that she loved him and asked if he loved her too. He responded with a hearty smile, saying he loved her lots and she should stop asking him obvious questions. Zen realized that none of this was still getting to him, and he didn't understand that she meant what she said romantically. But for now, she was glad to have secured a nice spot on his lap, knowing another chance would come. While she was in that compromising position, Hasaku remembered that he had some papers that had to be filled up quickly, so he asked if she was fine with him doing some work with her in the way. She agreed, and he squeezed forward, placing the papers on the desk and unknowingly sending nerve-wracking sensations down her spine as he spoke directly into her ears. Eventually, the girl almost lost her mind and had to jump right out of his lap because she was dripping wet. She simply said it was too early for that, but Hasaku still didn't understand and replied that he was sorry. She told him that he was quite bold himself, but the dude was still confused and was glad that at least she was back in good spirits. Meanwhile, Suzu was busy writing and seemed to be filling out a form for a university overseas. Somehow, she was restless and couldn't focus at all. On the other hand, Hasaku was in line as he spun the wheel for a reward at a grocery shop. Surprisingly, he won the grand prize, which was 5 complimentary tickets to the new Ryoma world. A grumpy old lady was hating all the way, saying she was planning to take her daughter there, while the attendant handed over the ticket to Hasaku, asking who he intended to take. Obviously, he could not think of anyone other than his girls, but knowing all the things that happened between him and them, and the fact that he was their teacher, he felt it would be careless to invite them to a theme park. He began saying he would probably take his dad and mom, but just then, Sora demonically appeared and asked him what he had in his hands. Her eyes were lit with excitement the moment she saw 5 tickets for Ryoma, and she explained to him that it was a place full of selfie spots and one where every girl was dying to go. She congratulated him for winning those and automatically assumed he was going to take them all, so she celebrated, saying that was the best thing ever. With her beautiful smile all up in his face, Hasaku couldn't say no, and knowing he was the big brother in their lives, who owed them the best youth ever, he just knew he had to see this through to the end. The same guy who was worried about going on this trip was the most excited of them all, as the park turned out to be such a colorful one that created a feeling of nostalgia in him. He had to tell himself to calm down, and the girls asked him why he was busy getting all excited by himself, acting like he was way younger than them. He apologized, but just then, some ladies holding a drink accidentally spilt some of it on his shirt, and the stain resembled some fish he had inscribed on his shirt. Anyway, Megu had a hanky handy, but as she helped him wipe the stains off, Hasaku said it was pretty hard to tell who was the chaperone with her acting so mature. However, she responded, telling him she didn't visit the park thinking of him as a chaperone. Obviously, he got the implied meaning from her statement, and both of them turned red. She eventually smacked him in the face with her handkerchief and looked away, as the other girls told her to spill the tea already. Anyway, Hasaku pointed out that the girls were showing off so much skin, but he told him to stop being an old geezer and let them have their fun. He then said that they were drawing so much attention, all dressed up, and had to be more aware of that, but the girls became overwhelmed with cuteness, realizing that he had indirectly complimented their outfits. On the way, Suzu whispered to Megu that she had done great, and Megu said she wasn't so bad herself. Everyone was walking, and Suzu was left behind, thinking to herself, while Megu and Suzu planned to attract Hasaku's attention as much as possible. They called Suzu to join them, but she was still lagging, and they had to ask her if something was the matter. However, Suzu pretended there was nothing wrong, and they should all have fun, as much fun as possible. On their little adventure, everyone was excited, and Hasaku, who should have been acting as their chaperone, was the biggest fool of them all. So Megu held his face close to hers, warning him that even though she didn't think of him as their chaperone, he had to act it a little, because he was already running wild and could collapse before the day ran out. She asked Suzuri to back her up, and she weakly agreed that she was right, but Megu noticed that something was off about Suzuri's response. They were interrupted by Sora and Hasaku, who had found a new ride to hop on and ran off to the carousel horses. When they got there, Sora was finding it difficult to climb on the horses, so she asked Hasaku to help her. He directed her on how to place her feet in the stirrup, but she asked him to give her a push. Now he knew that the best place to push her from would be from the peaches, but knowing that she was no longer a toddler, he couldn't just go touching her wherever he felt like, because that would mean him risking his gentleman status. But right in the middle of his confusion, she surprised him by climbing on the horse all by herself and giggling, saying she was only messing with him, and it was funny to see him all freaked out. However, Sora was quite in a frenzied state within herself because she couldn't imagine how things would have been if he had really grabbed her there. In any case, she knew he would have done it typically back then when they were younger, but now that he was showing restraint, it only meant he was more conscious of her. Later, they went on to have more fun eating, taking selfies and enjoying a good time. Anyway, out of the blue, Megu asked Sora whether her outfit was hot and could draw enough attention towards her. Sora told her that it wasn't the case because she knew that Megu was easily embarrassed about being excessively exposed. But truthfully, Megu wasn't really worried and was trying to attract Hasaku's attention, hoping that if she was hot enough for him, they could probably hold hands and do deeper stuff. For that reason, Suzu told her that the outfit was lewd enough and she should go ahead and display her flirty side to him. Just then, Hasaku and the others returned with his forehead shining and waiting for a pat. She asked him to draw nearer for a second. Suzu could fix his hair, but right as he bent, he bumped into Zen from behind and accidentally tripped and fell with his hands squishing Megu's therapeutic orbs. The girls were shocked, but Suzu was hoping for Megu to show her juicy side to Hasaku. However, the girl's heart was beating so fast and she gave up, saying Hasaku should get his hands off her already. Later, they headed to the Rose Garden. But on the way up, Hasaku was reminded of his past when his grandma was his guardian, discussing a parent-child school trip to an amusement park. It turned out that it had already happened, and Hasaku didn't show his grandma, so she wouldn't have to stress her weak legs over him, and so she had to apologize to him for not being there for him. Back in the present, his personal reflection was interrupted by the girls who urged him to stop spacing out and have some fun. Later, they ventured into a rose garden and came across a building. When they got in, Suzu referred to Alice in Wonderland, referring to a drink that could make one shrink to Zen's size. But Sora found this amusing and said that it would suit Suzu to go overseas. From there, the girls went on to say they had to plan a trip abroad and go on a world tour. And even though that trip would be quite expensive, all they had to do was have faith that Hasaku would pull some more tickets. In that case, if that successfully happened, Suzu would be their interpreter because she wouldn't find it difficult to play that role. Meanwhile, Megu and Hasaku were still in the garden, and Megu was so taken in by the beauty and nice smell of the roses. She stated that it was her dream to be proposed to with 100 roses, but just then it occurred to her that she sounded like she was begging him to propose to her. And so, she explained that that wasn't the case. Surprisingly, she turned to see that he had been invited to a tea party, and this made her somewhat mad at him. As Hasaku looked at how the girls blended in well with the rose garden, he was happy. But just then, he realized that Zen was missing. Instantly, the girls were scared, wondering whether Zen had shrunk like Alice in Wonderland, so they started searching for her in the bushes. Surprisingly, she was seated calmly somewhere isolated, and Hasaku found her, remarking that she was pretty good at finding the very best spots. In fact, he reminded her of a memory when, back then, her parents were looking all over for her, and it turned out that she had hidden herself up in a tree while trying to find a good spot to settle in but got stuck and couldn't come down. Eventually, Hasaku found her and they both got lost, but that was one good memory. Because it was raining, Zen said that even though the rain was cold, being on Hasaku's back made her feel warm, and she enjoyed warm things such as staying with her dog, eating good food, and finding new things. In addition to being with all the girls and also being with Hasaku. Hasaku returned the compliment, saying he felt the same because the girls were lively and warm, and he was really glad he got to visit the park with them. He was saying he wished for the day to never end so they could visit again sometime, and Zen smiled, saying they should do it the next year and the year after that forever and ever. On the other hand, the other girls were worried, seeking Zen and Hasaku and hoping they hadn't gotten missing together. They called their names out loud, and Hasaku said he would. Hasaku tried to alert the others that he had found Zen, but to his utmost surprise, she reached out for him and hugged him. Sora felt she had just heard Hasaku's voice that moment, but she wouldn't have confirmed it for sure because right now he was in Zen's arms, probably about to get kissed. She explained that being with everyone was a precious moment for her, but right then, being with him was better, and they could hang out there just a little longer. In no time, Zen fell fast asleep, leaning on his arms, and the girls later found them together. Later, it was nightfall, and the girls had so much fun that they didn't even notice how quickly time had gone. Even though it was time for them to go, Sora wanted them to wait for the most important event of the day, the fireworks Fantasia. Hasaku wasn't cool with the idea of them staying that late, but Meg told him they had already alerted their parents. Besides, there was nothing more precious to ladies than seeing fireworks with the guys they love, so she begged him with cute eyes to let them go home late. Hasaku felt bad because, as a teacher, he couldn't fail in his responsibility to protect them, but he eventually agreed on the condition that the moment they were done seeing the fireworks, they would go right home. They were still wondering what activities to participate in before the fireworks, so Sora suggested that they go on a ride, and Hasaku insisted that he wanted to ride the roller coaster. Meg told them that no way would happen because he had ridden the roller coaster 28 times already, so Suzu suggested the Ferris wheel instead. However, they couldn't all board the Ferris wheel at once, so the coordinator said they would have to split into groups of 2. It was that moment that the girls' romantic processes ran at full speed because everyone was thinking of how to end up seated with Hasaku. In the end, Hasaku chose to ride alone, saying the rest of the girls could ride together. But they ultimately settled the matter with rock, paper, scissors, and Hasaku ended up together with Suzu. They enjoyed the ride, and Suzu was almost dying from nervousness and awkwardness because she was alone with him and knew things could happen. Not to mention that his knees were only inches away from hers, and her eyes were scared of meeting his. She looked outside and observed the beautiful night sky, and then said she wondered what life was like beyond the sea. She began saying she enjoyed studying, all thanks to Hasaku, but as she studied, she understood there were things she didn't know and hadn't done. Every new thing she learnt made her feel the world was growing while she was shrinking down in a world growing larger. And soon she became excited and had another dream to pursue, which was to get to know the great world and see it with her own eyes. For that reason, she intended to attend a university abroad after graduation. Hasaku was excited for her, saying she had his support, but he soon began to tear up as he realized he would miss her. Suzu, on her own, said she was scared that if the dream came true, then it meant they would all stop hanging out together, and in that moment, she only wished to know if she was making a big mistake. Will Suzu stay or leave, and which of the 4 girls will become Hasaku's wife? Drop your answer in the comments section if you'd like to find out in part 2 of the series. If you enjoyed the watch, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for similar content. As always, thanks for watching.